Hello and welcome to The Steamy, the politics podcast from The Scotsman. I'm Rachel Amery, The Scotsman's political correspondent, and I'm joined today by Deputy Political Editor David Ball and Westminster correspondent Andrew Quinn. Now, the dust has settled on the Holyrood election and all the new MSPs have officially been sworn into the Scottish Parliament. We want to get into all of that, but Andrew, there's a bigger story happening right now, isn't there? It has seriously been kicking off in Westminster. Now, a quick recap, and I'm sure listeners do not need reminding. Labour had a terrible time at the polls last week, particularly in Wales, when their First Minister even lost her seat. But it wasn't great for Scottish Labour either. Worst results since devolution, and Party leader Anna Sarwar conceding defeat very early on in the day. And that is now making things very, very difficult for Sir Keir Starmer. He's at a very, very shoogly peg right now, and we're waiting to see if anyone's going to make a move against him. And Andrew, I think we've seen a bit of a move starting. Can you tell us what's happening down in Westminster?
Yeah, totally. So we've had the best part of 100 MPs have said that Sir Keir Starmer should resign as Prime Minister. That's out of about, there's just slightly over 400 Labour MPs. Now, until today, it had just been junior ministers and PPSs and backbench MPs. But today we had the big one. It was Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, who said the Prime Minister had to resign. It was a little bit underwhelming, though, I'll say, because we had been expecting Mr. Streeting to launch a leadership challenge, which is a little bit different. He would have needed 81 signatures from MPs to launch a leadership challenge. His allies had been telling everyone, oh, he's got enough numbers, he's going to do it, but he hasn't done it. So it suggests that he either doesn't have enough or he's holding off. So it's a wee bit underwhelming in that sense. And the Prime Minister is going to continue for now. Anyway, it doesn't look like there'll be any more cabinet resignations at the moment. Maybe I'll eat my words. But yeah, Sir Keir Starmer's basically just said, look, if you want to challenge me, there's a process. You need these number of signatures. So he's managed to survive for now. It's obviously been an absolutely crazy time, though. I've not even had time to shave if you're watching on YouTube or whatever. So yeah, it's been mad here. It's been developing as we go on. I think probably on Monday or Tuesday, I was at Downing Street. I kind of expected that the Prime Minister might go, that actually might resign. He had a lot of MPs saying they wanted him out. But actually, he seems to have come out a bit stronger. He's got quite a lot of support from backbenchers. Not sure it's sustainable long term, though, like to have a quarter of your party have openly said you should go. It's going to be very difficult for him, and it means like rebels are just going to be emboldened if they oppose government policy. But I would say for now he'll stumble on, which is quite mad, really.
Now, Wes Streeting's not the only person that people are talking about as potentially the successor here. Angela Rayner was also mentioned, and then this morning, was it in The Guardian that she wrote this morning? She was saying this morning anyway, this is Thursday that we're recording this podcast. She's made an announcement as well, not quite as dramatic, but worth listening to all the time. Yeah,
so she had obviously left the government last year because she'd had an HMRC case where she hadn't paid stamp duty on a second home. She had an investigation into that, but it had been deemed that she'd broken the ministerial code before the outcome of the investigation happened. But then she said now that she's been cleared. So that would kind of open up a route for her to become Prime Minister if she wanted, or at least an avenue back into government now. She's one of the leading candidates. She hasn't said at all that Keir Starmer should go yet, though, so perhaps she's not as keen on the ambitions for becoming Prime Minister, but also her Manchester colleague, Andy Burnham, who's the Greater Manchester Mayor, he's kind of tipped as one of the main candidates for coming in. But he's not got a Westminster seat, which is obviously an issue. Sorry, I'm in the House of Commons here. You can hear some of the noises that go on in the background for MPs to notify them when debates are changing. But yeah, so Andy Burnham doesn't have a seat. He would need a by-election for that to happen. He's very popular with the public. He's probably the most popular of the potential candidates with the public. But yeah, he needs a way to stand now. I've been pointing out there's 2 by-elections coming up in Scotland, in Aberdeen South and Arbroath and Broughty Ferry, because 2 SNP MPs, Stephen Gethins and Stephen Flynn, have gone to Holyrood. But I don't think Andy Burnham will be standing there. 1, because they're not in Manchester, and 2, because Labour didn't win those seats at the general election and did even worse at the Holyrood election. This time last week,
SNP Heartlands, isn't it? That's key.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, at the general election, Labour actually did quite well in Arbroath and Broughty Ferry, and were only what was it, like 600 votes back. But the idea that they could replicate that in a by-election with Andy Burnham, I'm not sure would go too well. And also, the SNP could really have a go at Labour parachuting in an English candidate. But yeah, it's all hectic here. It's been a pretty crazy week, to be honest. But I think there's maybe a wee bit of Keir Starmer's earned a bit of respect for digging his heels in such a weird way. It's probably seemed like one of his stronger moments as Prime Minister. So odd, because it's just about him digging in. It's not about like he's made a difficult policy decision or something like that. But yeah, it's been quite a crazy time since Monday.
David, in Holyrood, there's lots of eyes on Scottish Labour at the moment as well. Now, you've been trying to speak to Anna Sarwar, Scottish Labour leader, about this today, David. What's he been saying?
Yeah, every time this flares up or anything at Westminster and Labour, Anna Sarwar gets asked about this. Obviously, given the kind of poor election result and the fact that Anna Sarwar in February was the first person to call for Keir Starmer to go down, unfortunately for him, no one else came with him. He always gets asked about this. So journalists kind of were waiting for him for quite a while, because there's not a lot actually going on here today. I mean, the main question journalists have got for politicians is whether it was a penalty in the Celtic Motherwell game last night. So this is what Anna Sarwar had to say when he was asked about West Streeting and Andy Burnham and the whole situation at Westminster.
Yes, I'm presenting officer. Are you back in West Street then? Look, I have throughout this time made clear my position back in February. For me, it's not about personalities, it's about making sure we have a Labour government that's delivering for every party. Are you pleased that there potentially is now likely to be a challenge? Well, I think that's still to be seen, to be honest. I'm not sure if there is going to be a challenge, but people know my view and I stand by it.
And your view is quite similar to West Streeting's resignation letter, isn't it?
So my view was stated back in February. I think we need a Labour government that's rebuilding trust in this country and delivering for people in Scotland and right across the EU.
Are you worried we're going to face weeks and months of chaos? They could affect on markets and do bad things to the economy?
Look, I said what I did back in February because I believed in the national interest. We needed a government that was focused on delivering for people in Scotland and right across the UK. And that national interest still exists. And that's why I stated my view back in February.
He says he wants a kind of open election contest with other candidates able to get involved. Who else would you like to see run?
To be honest, I'm not interested in the personalities. I'm interested in the outcomes. Because what's really important here is that we have a Labour government that has the trust of people across the country and is delivering for people in Scotland and right across the country.
Who do you think is best to deliver that, Anna? So you must have an opinion on the basis of the people who put their names in the hat.
Well, at the moment, I don't think there's anyone that's put their name in the hat, so I think that's all still to come.
Do you support Andy Burnham running in Scotland?
So that again,
do you support Andy Burnham running in Scotland?
Look, Andy likes to say he's the king of the north. There's north of Manchester, that's Scotland, and I'm sure if Andy is going to run it, it'll probably be somewhere in
There's a couple of by-elections.
I'm not sure he's that familiar with Aberdeen. Shouldn't that be allowed the naming contest to this? Well, look, of course, in all these situations, you want the people that are the best players on the pitch, but that's ultimately a decision for the NEC. Of course, if anyone sought to stand in his Scottish constituency, that would be a matter for the Scottish executive to make.
Jackie, you're on the NEC. Do you think he should be in the contest?
Well, we'll just need to wait till after the NEC meeting on Tuesday.
Okay. Thank you. That was Anna Sarwar there speaking about it there. And he's really making that point that he doesn't want to get involved in any of the personalities. For him, he's just talking about he wants a stable government in Westminster, not backing anyone at the moment, but whether that will last if someone actually puts themselves forward into the actual challenge for Keir Starmer, we'll have to wait and see. There'll be a little bit of him, you would think, being a bit smug about this. Like, I told you that the UK government was in trouble when Keir Starmer isn't the man to take us forward. But obviously, after that election defeat, he'll be feeling pretty humble, regardless of what's going down on in Westminster.
Yeah, we were trying to speak to Anna Sarwar earlier in the week as well, and I realised that I am an observer on politics here rather than somebody advising the politicians, but I just don't understand why Scottish Labour are not seeing this as a victory. They're vindicated. They were the first ones to do it. I don't understand why they're not doing this, because earlier in the week we tried to speak to him and we were saying, can you please just repeat the line of saying that you want the Prime Minister to go? And he just wouldn't repeat it. He just kept saying, I've already said my position, I've already said the position. It's like, yeah, repeat the position, and he wouldn't do it, which was rather frustrating, I have to say. Speaking of Scottish Labour, David, you've had a piece in today's paper which was really interesting about the fallout inside Scottish Labour, because nobody in the party seems particularly happy with the results from last week. What's going on inside the party right now?
Oh, yeah, it's a bit of a mess as well. Not as bad as the UK Labour Party, but there's just this. I think there's a lack of responsibility from the leadership, and to those who've lost seats, and to activists who've seen a terrible election result in Scotland. It just feels like a business as usual scenario. I mean, Anna Sarwar's adamant he's not going to quit. I'm not sure how long that will last, but for now he is continuing as leader. And there's no one really, it's just this blame Westminster, but the campaign, a lot of people on the inside are not happy with how the campaign was conducted. A lot of people pointing the finger at Jackie Bailey, who's kind of renowned for having quite a personal control on Labour's selection process and just the inner workings of Scottish Labour. She's an integral part of that team. But as well as that, Michael Morrow, who was kind of responsible for the manifesto and the policies that were brought forward. A lot of people inside the SEC, which is the kind of ruling body on Scottish Labour, not happy with his role in this. And there's an SEC meeting on Saturday, and it could be fireworks, I suppose. There'll probably be a vote of no confidence against the leadership, but likely to survive maybe. A lot of the quite left-wing kind of extremists on the SEC would maybe not get enough support to push that over the line, but it's going to be kind of airing the laundry at that meeting, and just I don't think a lot of people are happy with just blaming Westminster for what went wrong, where there are quite obvious problems that happened in that campaign, not ambitious enough, and it's just going to go on until someone takes responsibility for it. And so far, that's just not happening. And it doesn't help that Anas wants to carry on as leader indefinitely. So I don't think that helps the mood of people who feel that they've been let down. And yeah, it's just going to rumble on, I think. They're also kind of rowing about whether they'll get to be the biggest opposition party at Holyrood, obviously joined with Reform. And we won't know today. It will be probably next week or maybe tomorrow on Friday. We find out who will go first at FMQs, and that'll be a big. Anna Sarwar, I think, is very concerned that he would go after Reform. So that will be a big moment if that does happen for him. He can actually show that he is moving the Labour Party forward in Scotland, but at the moment it does feel like they are just going backwards. And without that responsibility, it's very difficult to see them moving forward.
Andrew, what do you think? Is it the UK government's fault that Labour did so badly in Scotland, or does the party up here need to maybe have a bit of reflection?
Yeah, I mean, it's both, definitely. Look, the UK results were terrible for Labour last week, and a large part of that is down to people just don't feel they've done enough. There's been loads of mistakes. Like, think about how many U-turns. There's been like over a dozen U-turns on policy, and people just really, really don't like Keir Starmer. So that plays a big part, but really, Scottish Labour weren't offering that much different to the SNP, in the sense like they didn't have a big offer. Essentially what they were saying was better management, and generally that doesn't work that well unless a government's like crazy unpopular. So without a big policy idea, then it was going to be very difficult for them to get rid of the SNP and to turn the tide when it was already a difficult situation because of the UK government. I mean, I think there's a little bit of parallels here between that and like Wes Streeting wanting to become Prime Minister, because essentially all he's offering is better management than Keir Starmer. You say, no, I won't make the same mistakes. It'll be better presentation style. A little bit similar to what Anna Sauer was saying with John Swinney. But generally, that's not enough to entice people to vote for you or to change their mind on who they already support. You need to come up with concrete policy differences. The SNP learnt that when they lost the 2003 Scottish election. Alex Salmond came in, took over from John Swinney, and realised they needed big promises. So they had things like free university tuition, free prescriptions, that they promised because they knew you need some things to inspire people. Whereas Labour, in fact, I would actually say Labour's promises were actually quite like UK Conservative type promises when they win elections, in the sense it was like, we're going to provide fiscal responsibility. And that only really tends to work when there's been so much chaos before. And I would say since John Swinney's come in, there's actually been a lot more stability in the SNP. So I think, it goes both ways. Madness if Anas stays for ages, but I guess it points to there aren't an awful lot of people either willing to take the job or capable of doing the job.
Well, let's move on to how things are going in Holyrood. It's been the first couple of days in Parliament for the new MSPs. It does have a very much a first day at school vibe just now. So I've been in Holyrood all week, and the new MSPs have been getting inductions, they've been getting tours of the building. They've all been assigned election buddies as well to help them learn how things are going. There's also, I think it was on Tuesday, the Garden Lobby, which is kind of the main gathering place in Holyrood. It kind of got turned into like a university freshers' fair almost, with all the different Parliament departments having a sort of a stall to sort of explain what it is that they were doing. So it's been really nice to sort of see who all the new MSPs are. They've still got hopes and dreams in their eyes. They've not been squashed down by the system yet. So that's really nice, and it'd be nice to see that continues as parliamentary term goes on. So really interesting to see just how the mood is. It's all quite jovial at the moment. It's all quite happy at the moment. There's a lot of new faces too. I think particularly because Reform, it's a whole new bunch of people, and so it's quite difficult to keep an eye on who everybody is in that party, because there's almost like no sort of starting point there other than Graham Simpson there. Now, one of the big sort of talking points from this week has been one of the Green MSPs, Q Mani Vannin, particularly because of their visa status. So we've been trying to get down to the bottom of exactly what is happening here. And our understanding at this point in time is they're on a student visa. The Scotland Act was amended last year, which would allow somebody on a student visa to stand. They're in the process of getting a graduate visa, which would allow them to stay in the country for 3 years. That doesn't, of course, solve the problem of the fact that a parliamentary term is 5 years. So they're trying to get other visas as well. David, what have you been making of this particular story this week?
I mean, you can tell we've not had much to write about this week. This is the big story. It's quirky, I would say. I don't think it's that scandalous because, as you said, these were the rules that were agreed by MSPs. And all MSPs voted in favour of the reforms. And the other thing is, I guess, if they can't get their visa extended for the whole parliamentary term, they can just step down. There's not even a by-election because they're on the regional list. In the last parliament, I think at least 2 Conservatives stepped down just because they wanted to do something else.
Yeah, I think it was a Highlands and Islands one and a Mid-Scotland and Fife one, and the Conservatives
Yeah,
stood down.
Donald Cameron was one of them. And then they just the next person on the list can come in. So I think if there was more going on, it wouldn't have been that big a story. But it is quite interesting, I think, and it just shows that some of these laws between devolved and reserved competency are a bit, some of the word is, they are quite quirky and they are quite nuanced sometimes. But yeah, that's been a big talking point. It just shows we've not really got started yet since the new MSPs have been back. As you said, there has been quite a lot of fresh faces. Some of them looked absolutely terrified when there was about 30 journalists waiting for Anna Sauer at the end of the corridor earlier. So yeah, they'll get used to it, I suppose. But it is nice to see lots of fresh face and very upbeat people back. We'll see how long it lasts.
We might. Am I right? We might also get. It might happen to a Tory though, where they might end up standing down because Douglas Lumsden's wanting to stand in the Aberdeen South by-election. I mean, I think that's a real brass neck, isn't it? You've just been re-elected to Holyrood, and then you're like, oh, actually, I'd rather be in Westminster. The
See you
wage,
later.
yeah, the wage is slightly better in Westminster, although it's not as good a commute. Obviously, it's a bit longer, but yeah, like. He's probably kind of gotten away with that a wee bit because of the stuff about the Green MSPQ. So yeah, that's absolute madness. So I don't know. The Tories have been quite critical, haven't they? But
Well, I suppose that he announced his bid for Aberdeen South before he was even officially sworn in as an MSP, wasn't he?
it's absolute madness. I mean, he's probably quite encouraged though, isn't he? Because Stephen Flynn was only just elected. Well, what was it, about 1,000 votes, I think, that Stephen
Flynn. Holyrood.
Yeah, for Holyrood.
I can tell you, I've got my Book of Doom right in front of me here. Let's have a quick check. His majority was 1,244. Not huge. I think it was the 10th smallest majority, actually.
Yeah, so I'm sure for the Westminster by-election that comes up, the Tories will throw quite a lot at it. They'll probably send up a lot of big UK Tories, like I'm sure Kimmy Badenoch will come up, and a lot of the shadow cabinet. So that'll be one to watch. But obviously it takes away from the Tories' whole argument because one of their folks trying to head off straight away.
Now, the other big thing that's happening today in Holyrood is the election of the presiding officer. I've got it on the television next to me just now, and all of the sort of talk around the election of the presiding officer is that things need to be changed. It needs to be livened up a bit. And there needs to be a bit more buzz about the sort of how debates are done. I think a lot of it's been, do you want someone like Liam MacArthur who is proven to be a sort of fair and steadying hand, or do you want to shake it up a little bit? Kenny Gibson yesterday was suggesting some quite radical changes. He says he wants a noisy, boisterous chamber rather than the sort of the monologues that you sometimes see in Parliament. David, what do you think the next presiding officer needs to do?
Well, that is the question. It very, very much depends on who wins because, as you said, Kenny Gibson, I think, will shake it up. He's been here for a long time. He was finance convener, I think, last time. I think it was finance. And he was very good at holding SNP ministers to account, which for some SNP backbenchers isn't their strongest suit. He really did do it, and I don't think anyone would think that he couldn't do that in the chair. Alison Johnson got some criticism, some of it a bit unfair, for the way she kind of operated in Parliament. The Tories obviously had big beef with her over exchanges, shall we say, with Douglas Ross. And I don't think Kenny Gibson would put up with any of that nonsense, to be perfectly frank. So I don't think they want him anymore in that sense, but there is a kind of reputation that it is kind of the Diddy Parliament and it needs a bit of toughening up. So Kenny Gibson would definitely give us that. But whether that is what we actually need, I don't know. Liam MacArthur, I think, in the assisted dying debate, which he obviously brought the legislation through and was very good at working cross-party and getting support from everyone. So he's a good figure to kind of carry that on. But yeah, we will just have to wait and see. But it could be quite a wholesale change if Kenny does manage to get over the line. I think we can see quite a personality in the chair, which we haven't really seen for a long time here.
Andrew, you obviously watch things down in Westminster, and no one's going to argue with the fact that it is a bit more lively in Westminster. Does Holyrood need to take a leaf out of Westminster's book here?
Look, if we're going by a journalist's vote, Kenny Gibson wins unanimously, I think, doesn't he? It's like everybody wants the content, him slapping down folk. Like, what was it? I think he mentioned something about we don't want people reading from notes and reading like pre-written scripts or something. Like, I think he is right. It's a bit harder to do that in Westminster because you don't have the desk in front of you, and it's a bit more combative, definitely. I think you do see from the people who've been in Westminster that because you get shouted down a little bit, it forces you to perhaps be a little bit more concise because you just can't ramble on, and the speakers do tend to intervene a bit more. So there's maybe something to be learned from that. But I would say the Holyrood chamber, the way it's built, kind of seems to lose a bit of the atmosphere as well. So that's going to be part of it. But I mean, yeah, Kenny G would be like quite fun, I think. And I mean, it'll be really interesting to see how the MSPs vote, because I imagine a lot of the opposition MSPs will vote for Kenny Gibson just because they know he'll be quite strong against his own party.
Well, this is the thing. I believe it is an anonymous vote, so we won't actually know which parties and which MSPs have backed who, because I think it is completely anonymous. But it will be announced, I'm sure, by the time you're listening to this podcast. So if you hop on to the Scotsman's website, you will see exactly who won and our reaction to all of that. Now, before we leave today, we had MSPs sworn in today using, I think it was about 14 different languages. They have to say it in English, but they can also repeat it in a different language if they want. So saw 5 of them using Gaelic. There's quite a few using Scots and Doric as well. Quite interesting as well that there was a Shetland one followed immediately by Arcadian. So I thought that was quite a good wee fun bit to watch in Parliament. But other languages, we had Zimbabwean Shona, we had Dutch, Polish, British Sign Language, Hindi, and I think we need to give a special shout out to Lib Dem MSP, newly elected MSP, Yipi Chow Turvey, who did her oath in English, Mandarin and French. So we'll finish this episode by hearing a flavour of some of those oaths in the different languages. In the meantime, keep up to date with all the latest news, comment and analysis on the Scotsman's website. And thank you to David, to Andrew and to producer Kelly. We'll see you next time.